Welcome to Dajobnik, your command post for clarity and perspective.
Good afternoon. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman. This is day 153 of the October 7th war. Day 153 that the hostages have been trapped in the Hamas terror dungeons. I want to start today with an update on our casualties from this war. IDF fatalities since the start of the October 7th massacre have unfortunately risen up to 587. That is up one since our last briefing yesterday. The people of Israel grieve with the family of Staff Sergeant David Sasson, aged only 21 years old. Staff Sergeant Sasson was from Ganot Hader in central Israel. He was killed in a fierce battle with Hamas in southern Gaza. He served in the Oketz Canine Unit. We know that the IDF canine units have played a key role in this war with Hamas, saving the lives of Palestinian civilians under fire from Hamas, as well as our own soldiers sniffing out explosives, searching for hostages and discovering tunnels. The IDF and all Israelis share in the terrible grief of their families. We will continue to accompany them at this unbearable time. Our hearts go out to all of the families of those soldiers killed in action, as well as those murdered and taken hostage and wounded. May their memories be a blessing. Now an important update on the approaching month of Ramadan, which this year is from the 10th of March until the 8th of April. It's a source of pride amongst Israelis that our own Declaration of Independence explicitly protects freedom to practice religious beliefs, freedom for all faiths and worship, regardless of one's religion. So on behalf of the State of Israel, we want to wish a Ramadan Kareem to all the Islamic world, a holiday full of self-reflection, compassion, and generosity in the embrace of their families. We know the unique significance, the religious significance that Ramadan has. So today, we reiterate that this year, and every year, Israel will strongly safeguard the freedom of worship for all faiths at all sites in Israel, especially on the Temple Mount and Al-Aqsa. During the first week of Ramadan, the entry of worshippers to the Temple Mount will be permitted, similar to the numbers in previous years. A weekly assessment of the security and safety aspects will be held, and a decision will be made accordingly. Unfortunately, radical Islamic elements are trying to increase incitement. Hamas and Islamic Jihad have already called for attacks on Israelis during Ramadan. Therefore, the National Security Council of Israel are telling the Israeli public to be responsible while traveling abroad and to act in accordance with our travel warnings. Now further news on the UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict, the report published this week. Finally, after 5 months, this report was published. The report said that there was clear and convincing information that the hostages trapped in the Hamas terror dungeons have been subject to rape, sexualized torture, and cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment. The Hamas rapist regime perpetrated sexual violence, gang rape, terrible crimes. This is now recognized by the UN's foremost authority on the matter. I want to make two important points here. Firstly, the State of Israel again calls on the United Nations Security Council to designate Hamas immediately as a terrorist organization. Israel is at a loss to understand why Hamas is not subject to the same international sanctions regime as Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and ISIS. Israel again calls for an urgent meeting of the United Nations Security Council to discuss the report and issue a fierce condemnation of its sexual violence. Failure to carry out these two actions is having a clear result. Hamas and their supporters will conclude that the UN is apathetic to Hamas crimes against humanity, against Israeli civilians, and not least against the hostages it is now abusing right now. In its tacit complicity, the UN will bear indirect responsibility for encouraging further Hamas atrocities. Now an update from COGAT regarding humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza. In the last 24 hours, 257 trucks loaded with humanitarian aid were transferred to the Gaza Strip. Among these 257 trucks, 153 trucks carried food, the rest carried medical supplies, shelter, equipment, and water. In northern Gaza last night, 11 food trucks were delivered, adding to the steady influx of other aid vehicles. Over the last 24 hours, a total of 26 trucks, all from the private sector, have made their way northward. We say again, there is no limit to the amount of movement of aid to northern Gaza. Since the start of this war, we've worked with the USA, our dear friends in the USA, the UAE, Egypt, Jordan, France. We've facilitated 25 airdrops, delivered more than 750 vital humanitarian supplies, predominantly targeted at northern Gaza. This concerted effort will be ongoing as we continue working with our international partners to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches civilians in Gaza. Now I want to share with you an operational update on our war to defeat Hamas in Gaza. The IDF targeted raids in Khan Yunis and central Gaza. The IDF have located weapons manufacturing facilities, explosive devices, and military equipment and terror tunnel shafts. They have been dismantled. IDF troops killed approximately 10 terrorists over the past day. In Al-Qarara in Khan Yunis, the IDF identified 6 armed terrorists entering a military compound. They too were eliminated. That brings us to the end of today's briefing. I will now take your questions in the chat. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a question now from Liar of the Washington Post. According to a Washington Post report, Hamas officials are blaming Israel for the lack of progress in the Cairo talks. Any comment on the negotiations to release the hostages as we're heading into Ramadan?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I can't comment on the minutiae of our efforts to release our hostages in these negotiations. Needless to say, Israel will do whatever it takes to release our hostages. We've made very, very clear, and this has been reiterated by the US, that unfortunately it is Hamas who is the stumbling block right now by not telling us who is alive and who they have in their custody. They must be released right now. Let my people go right now. There is no other excuse. This is a crime against humanity. No one should fall for the Hamas propaganda that this is somehow Israel's fault. It is Hamas that is holding these dear hostages, and they must be set free right now.
That's all the questions. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Djobnik signing off.